Hello, everyone. This is Sean Costello. I'm very happy to be with you here today. We're picking up our lesson today with the same place we ended last time. Reality consists of four pillars: the physical universe, the Jewish people. The Jewish people have existed on the face of the earth for the last 4,000 years. 2,000 years ago, Jesus did live, he did die, he did rise again on the third day. 39 ancient sources document his life, time divided at his birth. I'm developing this information, this presentation, in early 2025, 2025 years after his birth in Bethlehem, as of May 14th, 1948, after being absent from the world's catalog of nation states. Israel once again appeared on the face of the earth. National Israel once again became a nation state as of May 14th, 1948. Now, reality demands an explanation. The correspondence theory of truth says that any theory of truth that would be found as true must correspond to reality. There are two theories of truth that are articulated to explain the world that we live in. Darwinian evolution, shown on the left, and the Bible, shown on the right. Before we transition to take a look at our purpose for our time together today, we're going to look under the hood of the arguments for Darwinian evolution. We must recognize that evolution and the Bible are two completely disparate, non-overlapping theories of truth, the truth of the world that we live in. Let's get started by looking under the hood of the arguments for evolution. The evolution pyramid consists of, from the bottom up, the Big Bang, abiogenesis, and macroevolution, which were invented out of whole cloth to replace in the beginning God. Starting 1859, the idea percolated down through the centuries and was comprehensively integrated with culture in the Western world and the United States beginning in the 1960s. Evolution and macroevolution, atop to the first and second tiers of the evolution pyramid, are the same as observed reality. Before we transition to looking under the hood in a detailed manner, let's recognize that in order for evolution to be understood as a comprehensive theory to explain the world that we live in, the Big Bang, abiogenesis, and macroevolution must be found to be true. What we're going to find is that the last three layers in the evolution pyramid demand miracle after miracle after miracle, absent a miracle maker. Why? Because nothing external to the naturalistic reality envisioned by Darwinian evolution exists. God, in Darwinian evolution, classically understood, does not exist. Let's get started at looking under the hood of their arguments. But first, we must recognize Darwinian evolution's underlying assertion that the impossible occurs over and over and over again. Everybody understands the concept of a bell curve, right? At the peak of the bell curve is the most probable thing that's going to happen. The farther away you get from the bell curve in standard deviations, the least probable of the event, proposed event, is going to be. Now, here is about 5 sigma away. The probability of that event happening under the bell curve is about 0. Over here, Darwinian evolution demands that the impossible occurs Not once, but over and over and over again. Absent God, absent an external miracle maker, Darwinian evolution demands that miracles occur. Not once, but over and over and over again. Let's get to understanding that picture. Okay, so we've put the bell curve to make that point and the evolutionary pyramid on the same page so we can talk through this and understand what's going on. At the top, let's look at the two layers that are common with observed reality, that are not problematic to a biblical worldview. Change is constant in life. Evolution as a word just can mean change. Stuff grows, stuff changes, season changes. I change my clothes. Everybody changes. Change happens. Change is not a threat to a biblical paradigm. So let's just move on. Microevolution is Darwin's observed natural selection, right? It's adaptation in a given species, over time to changing external environmental circumstances. That's not a threat to a biblical paradigm, because God created the original species with the ability to adapt and overcome in changing external environmental circumstances. Again, let's move on. Now we get to the bottom three layers of the evolution pyramid, only existent post 1859 and integrated with culture starting 1960. Macroevolution. Now, because of the correspondence theory of truth, macroevolution, if it's true, must be verified in the physical evidence left behind. The physical evidence, the physical record of what did happen on the face of the earth is the fossil record. The fossil record was revisited in the 1970s in the works of Stephen Jay Gould, Niles Eldredge, and Stephen Stanley, all of whom are noted evolutionists. They say the history of the fossil species includes two features particularly inconsistent with gradualism. Gradualism is small changes over long periods of time. The first thing they talk about, stasis. What do they mean? Most species exhibit no directional change during their tenure on the Earth. They appear in the fossil record looking pretty much the same as when they disappear. Morphological change, changes in speciation, is usually limited and directionless, which is the opposite of what you would expect if their theorized gradualism is true. The second thing, sudden disappearance. In any local area, a species does not arise gradually by the steady transformation of its ancestors. It appears all at once and fully formed. In short, they summarize, if evolution means the gradual change of one kind of organism into another kind, the outstanding characteristic of the fossil record is the absence of evidence for evolution. The fossil record does not portray an evolutionary beginning. Let's move on to abiogenesis. Abiogenesis simply is life from non-life. Abiogenesis violates the observed law of biogenesis, that being that life can only come from pre-existing living matter. Now let's think about this for a moment, you and I. Let's put our thinking caps on. If life can self-generate from non-life in an uncontrolled, mindless, chaotic, prebiotic soup environment, recreating that chance happening in a controlled lab environment using intention, well thought out experimentation should be achievable, right? After all, we're smarter and more capable than nothing, right? All this had to start from nothing. It turns out lots of very smart people, synthetic organic chemists, have been performing well-funded research since the early 1950s and the Miller-Urey experiment under the overarching umbrella of origin of life research. Now, according to Dr. James Tour, perhaps the world's smartest man, we've had human spaceflight, satellite connectivity, the internet, the entire silicon era of microchips, and computer technology. But origin of life research, his area of expertise, is still at the same place as it was at its advent with the 1952 Miller-Urey experiment. He says, researchers can make a barrage of stereo scrambled chemicals, but are nowhere close to making the basic building blocks and hooking them together. Researchers can't build the simplest bacterium with its 256 protein coding genes. They can't make the 4 classes of molecules, much less assemble them into the simplest bacterium. They don't have the information content in DNA and don't know how to hook the components together for a cell to function. The so-called simple cell, Darwin envisioned a simple cell, which is a small spherical cell that's no more complex than jelly, cellular jelly. But that simple cell is not simple at all. It's a highly complex factory with the ability to morph its own factory floor on the fly. There are certain cell functions where materials need to be moved from the one side of the cell to the other, and then a bridge is built, and then the bridge disappears. That's highly complex. If you think that's bad enough, the death knell to abiogenesis is actually millions and millions of years. Those Darwinian timescales, millions and millions of years, are actually an enemy of prebiotic chemical synthesis for 2 reasons. First, thermodynamic chemical interactions, those that produce heat. The yields from those interactions decrease in hours, days, or weeks. That's a mere twinkling of an eye in Darwinian timescales. Second, nature on a mindless prebiotic Earth doesn't keep a lab notebook, doesn't know how to restart, or even that it needs to restart any particular chemical synthesis that has occurred after that synthesis has run out of raw materials. There's only a finite amount of raw materials. Chemical interactions that create heat, those yields decrease in a very short period of time. You're assured to run out of either the chemical synthesis stubs out or runs out of raw materials and stubs out. And then after that, it doesn't know that it needs to begin again. Now, that's staggering news for the evolutionary argument. On a mindless prebiotic Earth, millions and millions of years actually presents an impossible roadblock to the singly naturalistic origin of life from non-life. Let's move on to the Big Bang, the bottom layer in the evolutionary pyramid. When we look at it, the case for the Big Bang is singularly, proliferate, with weasel words and inadmissible speculation. Why? Because nobody was present to witness the event, and the event cannot be replicated, cannot be duplicated in a controlled lab environment. This event demands miracle after miracle after miracle to occur. Again, absent an external miracle maker. Why? Because nothing external exists in a Darwinian naturalistic paradigm. The unseen realm with its inhabitants, God and Satan, do not exist in a Darwinian paradigm. Let's take a look at the miracles that are theorized to have occurred, right? Nothing exploded for no reason whatsoever. This is where the picture on the right comes in. Nothing has zero energy. How can zero energy explode? The most probable thing that is going to happen in a Darwinian, in a naturalistic paradigm where nothing exists that have zero energy, the most probable thing that's going to happen over and over and over forever is nothing. But they theorized that nothing exploded for no reason whatsoever. Miracle number one. Number two, whatever resulted from that random, meaningless explosion began to inflate for no stated reason whatsoever other than we needed something big. The universe is big. We're trying to explain it in naturalistic terms, so we needed something big. So we have to introduce a period of inflation. Miracle number three, the original single force separated into the precisely interrelated four fundamental forces of the universe for no reason. What are those four fundamental forces? Gravity, electromagnetism, the strong and the weak nuclear forces. First, the third miracle is this magical single force that separates into the four fundamental forces that we know about. And then, miracle number four, that naturalistic material universe begins to slow, cool, and stabilize into the physical universe that we know about. The complex interrelationship of the four fundamental forces cannot be overstated. First, there was a single force, then you just magically pull out of your hat electromagnetism, gravity, the strong and the weak nuclear forces in a complex a complex arrangement of four fundamental forces. Number five, on the earth, lightning struck on a mindless earth. Lightning struck an inert prebiotic pond, and somehow primitive life formed in a way that cannot be replicated in pristine laboratory conditions, despite decades of well-funded research, while in other areas of science, huge amount of progress has been made since 1952. Miracle number six, that so-called simple cell, which we know is not simple, somehow evolved into something that's extremely complex, including DNA and its pre-existent information content. And then somehow exited the primordial pond. For what reason? We'll figure out in later miracles. Miracle number seven. On the earth, that simple life form somehow speciated into all the species that we see, leaving no evidence behind, and in a way counter to the observable fossil record, which exudes stasis and sudden appearance. Miracle number eight, on the earth, two sexually mature and interdependent male and female life forms somehow found each other on the earth at the same time, in the same relative location, and figured out the mechanics of sexual reproduction, all within the course of one physical lifetime, absent desire for procreation, love, attraction, anything that comes with a biblical paradigm. Those elements of sexual reproduction are not transportable from Scripture over to a Darwinian paradigm. Why? Because nothing in a Darwinian paradigm exists external to the natural world that it envisions. Miracle number 9. The one physical lifetime and the co-location on the earth become relevant in the previous miracle, because if there's no second generation, then this is just an academic discussion, right? There has to be a second generation once this so-called simple life form splits into a sexually reproducing life form. They have to find each other on the face of the earth. They have to figure out the mechanics of sexual reproduction, all in the course of one lifetime. Otherwise, you're not getting the second generation. Miracle number 9. On the earth, trees and other plant life somehow evolve at the same time as that first simple life form somehow differentiated into two interdependent sexually reproducing life forms. Why do I say that? On the earth, the plant kingdom breathes in carbon dioxide and breathes out oxygen. The mammal kingdom on the earth breathes in oxygen and breathes out carbon dioxide. We exist in a symbiotic, interdependent relationship. And what that means is, for that early male-female sexually reproducing proto-human life form, proto-mammalian life form, they have to be co-located. They have to find each other. They have to naturalistic figure out the mechanics of sexual reproduction. They also have to have a mature cardiovascular system, because plants need humans to breathe out carbon dioxide, and humans need plants to breathe out oxygen. All three of us, male, female, plant kingdom, exist in a symbiotic relationship with each other. It's impossible. We cannot live without each other. Miracle number 9. Now that sounds like a lot. I understand. It's meant to sound like a lot, because the argument for the Big Bang, abiogenesis, and macroevolution is a lot. But before we get off the stage with this section, let's listen to what the evolutionists actually say about themselves. Colin Patterson was a senior paleontologist at the British Natural History Museum and the author of that museum's general text on evolution. In 1981, at the American Museum of Natural History, Patterson asked his audience of naturalistic experts, "Can you tell me anything you know about evolution? Any one thing that is true?" I tried that question on the geology staff at the Field Museum of Natural History, and the only answer I got was silence. I tried it on the members of the Evolutionary Morphology Seminar in the University of Chicago, a very prestigious body of evolutionists. All I got there was silence for a long time. Eventually, one person said, "I do know one thing. It ought not to be taught in high school." Let's let that sink in. The question was, can you tell me anything you know about evolution? Any one thing that is true? The only answer Patterson got, other than crickets, silence, was, "I do know one thing. It ought not to be taught in high school." That should tell us everything we need to know. Our starting point was that for evolution in a bigger picture to be acceptable as an alternate explanation for the world that we live in, the Big Bang, abiogenesis, and macroevolution have to all be true. Turns out none of it is true. So our starting point for our time together today was there are two theories proposed to explain the reality that we live in. The reality that contains the physical universe, the Jews, Jesus, and Israel back in the land. That reality, those pillars of reality are common to us all, external to us all, and independent of us all. What we've just shown in our 30-minute time period together today, that evolution is an inadequate explanation for reality. Evolution is an inadequate explanation for the world that we live in. That leaves us to recognize the Bible is the capital T truth. Genesis 1:1 to 2:3, the physical universe, creation. Genesis 12 to Malachi 4:6, the Jews. Matthew 1:1 to John 21:26, Jesus. Ezekiel 36, other places, Jesus in Matthew 24. When you see the fig tree, national Israel come back in the land, we're supposed to know that summer is near or God has entered his endgame. This will be our starting point for next time. I love you. I thank you so much for your time. Take care and God bless.